Hi everyone and welcome to this channel where I discuss different topics about accounting and finance. If you have requests, feel free to comment down below. For this lecture, I will be discussing the nature and forms of business organization. The objective is to enumerate and explain the different types and forms of business organization. We have here a diagram about business organization according to the nature of the activities they are engaging in and as to how they are formed. As to the nature of the activities, it could be service, merchandising, manufacturing, or hybrid. And according to the form, it could be sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, or a cooperative. So we are going to understand the concept for each of the nature and form of business organization. Let's start with the forms of business organization, where we are going to define each and we are going to cite 3 advantages and 3 disadvantages. But of course, the one that we are going to enumerate will not be limited to the given in our slides. First, we define what sole proprietorship is. Sole proprietorship is a form of business organization where capital is owned and provided by one person called the proprietor. We have also here the advantages and disadvantages in forming sole proprietorship. Now to enumerate for the advantages, number 1, we have easy to set up with low cost. Unlike partnership and corporation, where there are a lot of regulations that needs to be followed before setting up a business. So here, for sole proprietorship, it has relatively lower cost in terms of organizing such type of business. Number 2 advantage is that it is not subjected to corporate business taxes. So for example, for corporate income tax, it only subjects partnership and corporations and not sole proprietorships. Number 3, we have all profits goes to the proprietor. So whenever the sole proprietorship earns, it will just go to the one person called the proprietor. But of course, in case of losses, he'll be suffering all the losses. That's another disadvantage. By the way, what we are presenting here are not limited to what is enumerated on your screen or in this table. Okay, so what I just included are the 3 or 2 advantages and disadvantages. Now let's move on to the disadvantages. First one is that sole proprietorship has limited life. Why? Because the death of the proprietor would extinguish, or along with it is also the death of the sole proprietorship. So it will terminate its life. Number 2, we have unlimited liability. Now this is a very important concept. What do we mean by unlimited liability? It only means that creditors can go after the personal assets of the proprietor. So whenever the sole proprietorship business incurs obligation and such obligation cannot be settled due to insolvency of the sole proprietorship, the creditors can go after the personal assets of the proprietor. That is the concept of unlimited liability. Finally, one disadvantage is having limited capital. So unlike partnership and corporation, where it has greater access to capital, because take note here, as the definition suggests, it's only that proprietor, that one person who will raise for that needed capital for the business. Therefore, it will have limited capital. The next form of business organization is what we call as the partnership. Now, to define, according to our Civil Code Article 1767, a partnership The contract of partnership is composed of two or more persons who bind themselves to contribute money, property, or industry to a common fund with the intention of dividing profits among themselves. So there is what we call an agreement by the partners that they are going to form a partnership. So the owners here are called partners. Now, to state the advantages and disadvantages, so first advantage should be two heads is better than one for partnership. Of course, whenever a partnership will have to decide something, so the partners has something to say for the partnership, right? So, and they could combine their experience, their expertise in making the business grow and move and make the business move forward with their operations. Next, greater capital. So unlike sole proprietorship, a partnership has higher potential of creating or generating greater capital because again, there will be two or more persons who will contribute either money, property, or industry. Then the third advantage would be split losses. So in case that the partnership incurs losses, then it will be distributed among, or it will be distributed among the partners. Unlike sole proprietorship, where all losses will be absorbed by the proprietor. For the disadvantages, number one, we have it has limited life. Why? Because there are a lot of grounds for the dissolution of the partnership. For example, we have the death of the partner. The death of the partner will terminate the contract of partnership. Or it could be withdrawal of the partner. So if a partner would wish to withdraw his interest with the partnership or leave the partnership, then that would cause the dissolution of the partnership. That's why it has a limited life. Next would be potential conflict. Potential conflict because there is a possibility that there would be a conflict in terms of decision making or conflict in terms of um, how to do things in the partnership. And because, again, there are many of you who are the owners of the partnership. So potentially, conflict may arise due to different views of a certain thing, right? And number three, we have split profits. So split profits meaning all the profits would be distributed among the partners. So it may dilute the amount that you'll be receiving as a partner, right? The third form of business organization is a corporation. And under the revised Corporation Code, Section 2, it defined what a corporation is. So a corporation is an artificial being created by operation of law. So artificial being meaning a corporation is treated as a juridical person. So it's a person separate and distinct from the shareholders. Next, having the rights of succession and the powers, attributes, and properties expressly authorized by law or incidental to its existence. So under the revised corporation code, it enumerated the different powers of a corporation. So here, we have listed the advantages and disadvantages in forming a corporation. Number one, we have unlimited life. Before, prior to the revised corporation code, the corporation can exist up to 50 years, but it is renewable within 5 years before the expiry of the 50-year period. But now, if you are not going to stipulate it in your articles of incorporation, then the life of the corporation is assumed to be in perpetuity, meaning indefinitely. So that's why it has unlimited life. Number two advantage is that it has greater access to capital. So corporations can issue bonds and stocks to raise capital. Now, in case of publicly listed corporations where the public can invest in such corporation, then it would be easier for them to get capital for expansion and growth. So they just issue, let's say, bonds, or let's say they are going to issue stocks. The third advantage is limited liability. So this is the opposite of unlimited liability. So for limited liability, it means that the liability of the shareholder is only limited to the amount that he or she invested in the corporation. Meaning, if a shareholder invested, let's say, 100,000 to the corporation, then his or her liability towards the creditors is only to that amount of 100,000. So the creditors, in case of insolvency of the corporation, cannot go after the personal assets of the shareholders. So that's why it's an advantage. Unlike sole proprietorship and partnership, where the creditors can go after the personal assets of the partners or the proprietor. Now let's move to the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that corporations are highly regulated. As you can see, it has a separate law governing the corporation, the conduct of corporation, right? Under the revised corporation code. So which is the regulatory body would be the Securities and Exchange Commission. So highly regulated ang corporations. The second disadvantage is that incorporation is costly. So if we are going to compare the sole proprietorship and the partnership, so the incorporation process is relatively expensive, no, as compared to the other two forms of business organization. And to add for the third disadvantage, we could state that in terms of forming a corporation, in terms of operation, they have more complex ones than the sole proprietorship and the partnership. So that's about the corporation. Let's have the fourth form of business organization, which is a cooperative. So under the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008, Article 3, it defined what a cooperative is. So a cooperative is an autonomous and duly registered association of persons with common bond of interest who have voluntarily joined together to achieve their social, economic, and cultural needs and aspirations by making equitable contributions to the capital required, patronizing their products and services, and accepting a fair share of the risks and benefits of the undertaking in accordance with the universally accepted cooperative principles. So that's quite a long definition for cooperative. So I think uh, you have already in mind an example of a cooperative, maybe in your locality where you live. We will be able to see a lot, no? So a lot of cooperatives in the locality. So to state the advantages and disadvantages, so first we have democratic member control for the advantage. Democratic member control, one reason could be about the one member, one vote um, rule in cooperatives. Unlike corporation, the power of the stockholders is dependent on the number of shareholdings, and their vote is dependent on the number of the shareholdings. So meaning for corporations, if let's say assuming that you have 1 million shares, so you owned 1 million shares, that 1 million shares is equivalent to 1 million votes. That is for corporation. But for cooperative, no. For cooperative, regardless of the amount of share capital that you have invested in the cooperative, you'll be entitled to one vote. So whether big investment or small investment, you'll have one vote for the whatever decisions that the cooperative will have, right? So that's why it's a democratic member control. Next advantage would be government support. So if you are going to go over with the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008, you will see there are a lot of benefits, a lot of assistance given by the government to cooperatives. Why? Because the goal and the objective of the or of the cooperatives are directly um, beneficial, no, to the common band of interest that they have in the cooperative. So that's why they're, in terms of taxation, they are given with a lot of perks. So they are given exemptions in terms of, let's say, government facilities. Sometimes they are given priority, and there are a lot, no, a lot of benefits that are given to cooperatives. The third advantage is it instill an atmosphere of cooperation. So here for cooperative, as we can see in the definition, it always promotes the spirit of cooperativism, right? Because it's the members who patronizes the products and services of the cooperative. So there is cooperation in cooperatives, as the name suggests, right? Next, for the disadvantages, um, maybe it could have, or we could state that it could, cooperatives have lesser capital incentive. This is what I'm talking about a while back, that regardless of your investment, whether small or big, um, tendency is um, it does not give so much for the ones with bigger investment. So there will be lesser capital incentive. And apart from that, if we are going to look at the Philippine Cooperative Code of 2008, we'll be able to see there that the share capital of a member should not exceed 10% of the total share capital of the cooperative. So there will be limitations in terms of the amount of investment that you'll be giving to the cooperative. Okay, so there will be less incentive for big investors to take part. So usually for cooperatives, it's generally appealing for smaller investors not to know that a greater contribution does not lead to greater shares, and it is less attractive to the big investors, right? So that's why there is a lesser capital incentive. Also, if we are going to look at the financial statements of the cooperative, not the bottom line of the statement of financial performance is the net surplus. So not all net surpluses will be given back to the investors. So it will be, part of it will go to the community, part of it will go to the training, to the education, and then for the other, we have the patronage refund. So there are some allocations, no, in terms of the distribution of the net surplus of the cooperative. Next, we have slower decision-making process. Um, I included there slower decision-making process as disadvantage because in a cooperative, all members are actually owners of the cooperative. So who owns, if you are going to compare it with the corporation, who owns the corporation, they are called the shareholders. But for cooperative, we call them as members. So for the members, so all members in the cooperative are actually owners in the cooperative. And take note, you cannot say that one is more powerful over the other based on the share capital that you've invested, unlike corporations, right? As I have stated earlier. So for cooperative, take note, it's one member, one vote system, or one member, one vote rule. So meaning whenever there are decisions that will be uh, or whenever there are decisions now that will I mean, whenever there are big decisions that the cooperative will have, then there is a need to consult for all the members of the cooperative. So that could be the reason that it slows down the decision-making process for cooperatives. All right. We are now done with the different forms of business organization. So just to recall, we have the sole proprietorship, the partnership, the corporation, and the cooperatives. Next, we have the nature of business organization. So for the nature, we have the service, merchandising, manufacturing, and hybrid. So it is just a one slide presentation for the nature of the business, because what I would like you to understand is the differences in terms of the activities of each nature. I mean, the activities of the business organization. So you may engage in service concern type of business. So where the business renders services to the clients. Okay, so render service. For merchandising, there are two activities that we should remember here. We have the buying and selling. So it's the retail, right? So buy low, sell at a profit. Then the most common example for merchandising, of course, is the sari-sari store, right? Or it could be retail or wholesale, as long as the activities present are only the buying and the selling activities. If you're going to compare this one with the manufacturing, take note, for manufacturing, we added one more activity. So we have buy raw materials, then convert them or process the raw materials to produce the finished products. So after producing the finished products, then that is already available for sale. So for example, the manufacturer, let's say, of furnitures, so they buy logs or lumber in creating for the different furniture. Or it could be the manufacturer of shoes, manufacturer of appliances, their cell phones, right? So they are into manufacturing. All right. So, and finally, we have the hybrid. It could be a combination of the above, combination of either service, merchandising, and manufacturing. So I think the concept of as to the nature of the business activities, no, are very easy to understand and remember. So they only vary in terms of the activities that they are engaged in. So service, merchandising, buy and sell, manufacturing, buy, convert, and sell, hybrid, either, whatever combination for the three. Okay, so that is for the nature of business. So just to recall, for the types, we have service, merchandising, manufacturing, or hybrid. And for the forms, we have sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, or cooperatives. Take note, for the forms as well as for the types or nature of business organization, it's not limited only to what is enumerated here, because there are still other forms of business organization. Like for example, you have your joint venture, you have your trust accounts, and so on and so forth. There are still other forms of business organization, but we have only enumerated the most common ones. Okay? So that would be all for this lecture, and I hope that you learned something in this lecture. And again, if you have requests, please feel free to comment down below. Thank you so much, and have a good day.